Big hardware announcement this week. The Analog 3D. Analog are back. They're making a
Mm.
FPGA-based N64 with a range of uh, potentially great features. John, tell me what you know about this one.
Yeah, so this is the next line of console from Analog, obviously. The last one being the Duo, which is a nice take on the PC Engine. But I feel like this is interesting because this is first of all, they're using a larger FPGA than they've done in the past,
Yeah.
significantly larger than even what's in the Mr. FPGA, which by the way, the Mr. FPGA does have an excellent N64 core already. And it seems like they've spent a while doing their own unique core that is unrelated to that. And the idea here seems to be to offer an N64 that can match or exceed the sort of capabilities that you get with an HDMI modded N64. Like if you have the Ultra HDMI or the N64 digital from Black Dog, where it's essentially adding HDMI digital output capabilities to these systems. This one is fully 4K output. They talk about the CRT filters in there. They boast 100% compatibility, which I will certainly put to the test because there are a few games with some rather that aren't well emulated or emulated properly and even require hacks to work properly even on the Mr. Core. So we'll see what happens there. Um, there's also the new 8-bit O controller to go along with it, which is wireless, and it reminds me of sort of the modern Wii Pro controller, but with more of an N64 layout, which could be really nice. I guess one of the things that stood out to me though is in an interview that they did over on Engadget, they actually specifically called out the fact that there will be an optional mode that's like something basically modifying the way the RAM speeds work and some other things that bottleneck the real N64 that can allow for higher frame rates optionally.
Okay.
And this is something I'm very curious to see because a lot of these games have target frame rates that are much higher than what they actually deliver, right? And I'll be curious to see how far they can actually push this because it's not a real N64. It is obviously an FPGA, so there's more room to play around with things like that. And if that is indeed something that works as it sounds, we could be looking at a case where you get very nice video, accurate output, but smoother performance. They also weirdly mention VRR is supported, which I don't know. We'll see what that actually.
It's going to be great for all those 20 FPS N64 games.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, they're going to need ultra low frame rate compensation here, depending on how that goes. But thinking about it, I think this is actually the first analog system that supports 4K output. Because
Right.
I think
Okay.
everything up to this point has been 1080p max. So this one is full 4K. So, and it has an updated OS as well. Like there's a lot going on here it's all just a feature list for now, but it seems extremely promising and very interesting.
Hmm.
Um, and plus I like the actual physical design is top tier. You guys have seen it, right? It's a really beautiful looking machine. It's sort of like it has elements of the design language of the original N64, but sort of a modern take on it and shrunken down significantly. And they do retain original controller ports as well on the front. So even though
Hmm.
there are wireless controllers you can use, and it seems like they denote that there's a little LED. So basically on the N64 style controller ports, there's little LEDs within each controller port. So if you're connected to player one wirelessly, that LED lights up. So you know that that controller port's filled with a wireless controller, or you could plug in an actual wired one instead. I think that's super cool. So
Hmm.
I don't know. Well, plus the price, it's $250. And yeah, their shipping cost stuff is always not great, but for HDMI output N64s, if you get into the real hardware and you get one modded, those tend to sell for quite a bit more than this. Uh, you can't get an Ultra HDMI N64 for like under $250, that's for sure.
Wow.
So this ends up being a pretty darn good deal, I would say, if it lives up to promises. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. That's why I'm very interested to see how it actually plays out.
Oliver, do you have much history of the N64? Do you have much interest in this product?
Oh, I mean, the N64 was my very first console.
No way, really?
So, yeah, for sure. Mario 64 and the N64 and Star Fox and all that good stuff. So, I'd be very interested in playing N64 again, and I think this is possibly a great piece of kit for making me interested in actually enjoying some of those older N64 carts again, because I don't really have room in my apartment for something that can take composite input. I don't really want to fiddle with scalars. I don't want to have to sort out that controller situation. The idea of an all-in-one box that does all that, outputs to a modern screen, and has high-quality CRT emulation, especially now that I have a screen that can do like ridiculous brightness levels. So the brightness level of that CRT emulation is not going to be annoying to me. That does make me genuinely interested in playing N64 titles again. And I mean, the N64 was a pretty pivotal console for me, and I still have a lot of N64 carts. So for sure, I'd be interested in going over to this and checking it out. The one thing that did seem a little bit curious to me here, and I don't know if you have any insight into this, John, is the pre-order date. They said, I believe it's October 21st, but they have not announced any kind of ship date. And I think in the past they might have said that this was scheduled for 2024, but it seems weird to me to say, oh, pre-orders start on the 21st, but we don't know when we'll ship it to you. If that'll be, next year, when that will be exactly. That's the one bit of weirdness to me.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I would hope that they actually reveal that soon. The ordering of products from them is always a little bit iffy in terms of like, the allotments of units and like timing and all that. There's always a little bit of mystery around that for sure. That can be frustrating. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But yes, it looks like pre-order date is October 21st, but no actual release date is announced.
Okie doke. Yeah, I mean, I'm curious about this one for one reason. It's all about that overclocking, because we've kind of discussed this in the past, John, where the kind of games that hold up over time are those that actually run well, as opposed to, having the most fantastic looking graphics. And the N64, most of the games, or many of the games rather, just didn't really run particularly well. So, we can look back with fondness to, GoldenEye, but, those split screens sessions were running at like 8 to 10 FPS in parts. I'm really looking forward to seeing what this thing can actually do in terms of making these games run as we kind of imagine that they used to, but didn't. So that's a major sort of factor for me about this one. We got this interesting question from Dudley the Gentleman.
Nice.
Hi DF crew, what is the likelihood of Analogue creating a Dreamcast? What are the potential roadblocks to such a device being developed? The reason I included this question is that the Dreamcast is, what can I say? It was Sega's last console, effectively.
Yeah.
And it holds a level of affection within the gaming audience that is kind of stands apart, stands alone. I think we'd love to see an Analogue Dreamcast. What is the likelihood, John?
I mean, seeing what they've done here with N64, using the larger Cyclone 10GX FPGA, I'm starting to think that the fact that smaller FPGA chips have been able to handle N64, Saturn, and the like already, I'm wondering if we're reaching the point where Dreamcast is feasible. The problem is, though, is I feel like the clock speeds and just like the complexity of what's happening on the chip increases dramatically when you get to like Dreamcast era, to the point where I don't know enough about FPGA programming, reverse engineering this stuff to say for sure, but that seems like a pretty tall order, right? Like, and it's not a nut that has been cracked yet, as far as I can tell. Nobody's really gone down this road before, and that seems like a pretty challenging one, just in terms of getting it right. But still, the Dreamcast itself is fundamentally fairly simple in terms of what chips it uses. Like, it's straightforward enough that maybe it's possible. I feel like if you get to like PlayStation 2 and beyond, that's like getting into territory where I have a hard time believing that there's an FPGA chip that you could realistically put in a unit at a reasonable price, let alone engineer a core for it. That starts to seem impossible. But Dreamcast is like borderline, and I'm very curious to see if that can be done. But the other side of Dreamcast, though, It uses the GD-ROM format, and I don't remember the specifics as to what it takes to read those discs, and if it's just a software thing, like what does combination with the laser software or whatever, like what does it actually take to physically read those discs? Can they actually overcome the copyright stuff? That's what's not clear to me right now. And we've not seen, so something like the Polymega has support for game consoles that had sort of like copy protected discs, right? Like PlayStation and Saturn, but that just rips the image to the machine and then it plays it that way, I believe. Or at least it's not something where you're like reading it the way original hardware did. So I'm really curious to see like what can be done there. I don't know. It seems like a huge challenge is what I'm saying. I'm just thinking out loud about all the potential roadblocks here.